everyone. My name is Jennifer Maker, and it's a beautiful day to show you the best combination of adhesives to produce gorgeous results like these. Paper projects are always popular, and mandala-inspired designs are some of my personal favorites. I love how using a cutting machine lets us create delicate, layered designs with so much detail. But making a magnificent mandala like these new landscape designs that I'm sharing can be tricky. So today I'm going to share some of my best tips to make them easier. You can download my free landscape mandala designs from jennifermaker.com/636 through my library. The most important parts of a successful mandala project are planning, precision, and patience. Planning mostly relates to the right kind of cardstock, how you'll display the finished results, and how you'll keep the layers together. With such intricate cuts, high-quality cardstock really makes all the difference and will save you tons of time and money in the long run. Budget paper is made with shorter fibers, so it can tear rather than cut, and that's not the look we want here. The cardstock I've linked in my materials list has longer fibers, which will make your cuts much easier and more reliable. I'm using 12 by 12 65-pound cardstock and a bunch of fun colors to create my landscape designs. And with lots of layers, we need to keep them together and precisely aligned to create your scene. I've tried a lot of different adhesives for assembling mandalas and shadow boxes. The best choice depends on how intricate your layers are, how much depth you want between them, and whether or not you'll frame the project. Often, a combination is the best choice. Today, I want to add depth, so I'll show you how to use double-sided adhesive foam pieces in different thicknesses and shapes. Since they're white, you need to use the right type for different sections. Otherwise, they're going to show through, right? We don't want that. So I'm going to show you my tips, including why I have a fine point pen, scissors, and reverse action tweezers handy. That's where the patience part comes in. If you're assembling a mandala to display on its own, you can experiment with different adhesive combinations to create just the look you want. But if you want to display it in a shadow box frame, the assembled depth is important. So let's get my free designs and we'll start planning. Step 1. Get my landscape mandala designs. First, download my designs at jennifermaker.com/636. You can either download right from that link by saving the project or download from my entire free design collection. To find it, look for Libraries in the red bar at the top, and then click either Get a Password if you don't yet have one, or click Enter the library. Search the page for design number 636 and click the link to download the designs. If you're not sure how to use these files, go to jennifermaker.com/svgs to learn how to download and unzip files. There are 3 design files in the SVG folder to fit a shadow box frame like the one in my shopping list. There's a desert scene, a lake scene, and a mountain scene. If you look closely, you can see that I use the same round mandala-inspired design, and each one has the sun. There's also a DXF folder with cut files for other cutting machines, and a PDF folder with versions that you can cut by hand if you need to, plus a PDF reference guide. I'm using a Cricut Maker 3 cutting machine today, but the files can be cut on most Cricuts or other cutting machines. I don't recommend resizing the designs, so the full versions won't work easily with a Cricut Joy or Joy Extra. But you can make the round mandala on a Joy Extra by hiding the other layers. Step 2. Prepare and plan your mandala. To make your design in Cricut Design Space, click Upload and select Upload Image. Click Browse and find the design you want to use in the SVG folder. I'll use the mountain design. Then click Continue and Upload to add it to the canvas. We need to make sure the design will fit in the shadow box, so open the frames back. Mine has little prongs that you just lift up and then remove the backer. It also has a spacer in case you're making a thin design, but we need the space for all our layers, so I'll set it aside. Measure your shadow box's internal width and height to make sure it's square. Don't assume it, always measure. Mine is just over 10 inches in both dimensions. It's good to cut your layers 1/8 of an inch or so smaller than the frame so you have some wiggle room. Also, measure the depth from the glass to where the metal prongs will hold the backer in place. That's about how much usable space you have for the assembled layers, including the adhesive pieces. Mine is about 1.5 inches deep. Back in Cricut Design Space, the current design size is perfect since my frame is a little bigger than 10 inches square. If your frame is larger, keep the lock icon at the top closed and adjust the design's width to be 1/8 inch smaller than your measurement. I'll click Save and give my project a name so I can find it again. Now, I recommend you click Ungroup so you can move the layers separately. I recommend ungrouping designs because they upload grouped automatically. If you want to change the color of a layer, select it and click the color box near Operation to pick a new color. I'm going to keep everything these same colors though. We can do a little planning on how much depth we want our shadow box to have since we can see where the layers overlap. That's where we'll put the adhesives. On the canvas, drag the layers apart so you can see how many there are and their details. My mountain design has 10 layers, 5 in the foreground, 4 in the round mandala, and 1 for the solid background. I'll double-click each layer in the Layers panel and rename them Layers 1 through 10 so you can see the order better. The round mandala layers are very detailed, so I'll use the micro pop dots from my shopping list under Layers 6, 7, 8, and 9. The foam dots are 1/16 of an inch thick, so altogether that will fill about 1/4 inch of the frame's usable depth. The foreground layers have lots of large solid sections, so I'll use the adhesive foam squares and tape strips to attach layers 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'll use the thinner 1/8 inch foam, so that will fill about 1/2 inch of the frame's usable depth. If there's a little extra space in the frame at the end, I'll show you how to fill it then. And what about layer 5? Well, since the mandala doesn't touch the frame's edges, I'll attach it to the background layer and let the mountains rest on the mandala layers. I'll need to add foam around the edges to secure the solid sections to the background. I'll use foam that's the same depth as the assembled mandalas to keep the surfaces even. And you're ready to cut. Step 3, cut your mandala layers. Select the correct machine from the top right drop-down menu and then click Make. On the Prepare screen, make sure the correct base material size is selected. 12 by 12 inches is perfect for a shadow box this size. Click back on the first mat so it will show first on the next page, and then click Continue. I'm using this same material for everything, so on the Make screen, I'll click Browse All Materials and search for medium cardstock. I'll select medium cardstock 80 pound because it works well with the 65 pound cardstock I'm using, and then click Done. I'll also change the pressure setting to more for a cleaner result with these delicate cuts. If you're using the same material for each mat like I am, check the box next to Remember Material Settings to save time between mats. Now place your first color of cardstock face up on a green standard grip machine mat. Then use a brayer to adhere it well. These intricate layers take several minutes in the machine, so it's important to keep the cardstock in place for precise cuts. Check that your premium fine point blade is clean and in the clamp. Then press the flashing Load and Unload button to load the mat into your Cricut, and the flashing Go button to begin cutting. Taking the time to get nice cuts will make all the difference for your finished mandala. Remember, I mentioned being patient. If you have any issues with your cuts, go to jennifermaker.com/cleanercuts for more help and tips. When the cuts finish, don't unload the mat right away. Instead, gently lift a corner of the material to make sure the cuts went all the way through. If they did not, the cardstock could tear when you try to remove it. So instead, press that middle button again to make a second pass of cuts in the same spots. When the cuts are complete, unload the mat and flip your mat over onto your work surface, and then gently roll your mat back to release the cardstock. The excess cardstock should come away cleanly. You can also roll the mat to release the delicate mandala piece. If any sections stick to the mat, use a spatula to help lift them without tearing. Some cutouts might still stick to your design, but you can use a weeding tool to carefully pop them out. Place the piece face up in the correct orientation so assembly is easier later. Use a scraper to remove cutouts left on the mat because they can make your blade jump on the next cuts that you do. Continue cutting the rest of the cardstock, aligning the layers face up in the correct order as you go. Go by the design's order, not the cutting order. Step 4. Assemble the mandala shadow box. Once all your layers are cut, make sure they're face up in the correct order and aligned so the complete design looks correct. If you have any trouble, refer back to the Cricut Design Space canvas to check the layer's orientation and order. This shadow box design has sections, so we'll assemble it in parts, starting with the foreground, or layers 1 through 5. If you only want to assemble the mandala without a shadow box, I'll show you how to do that right after this. Let's first do the foreground layers. The shadow box frame helps align layers that fill the area, so have that open with the insert removed and face down near your face-up layers. Notice where the current top piece, which is layer 1, will overlap with the next one, layer 2. Those are the areas we need to adhere and support. Since the layer's inner circle cutouts align, we know we need to evenly support the entire back of the top layer. Flip the first layer face down in the frame and grab your adhesive of choice. I'm using the thinner 1/8 inch Barely Art squares and tape strips. We want the edges to be really well supported, so cut some of the adhesive foam tape into pieces an inch or so long. Put them sticky side down wherever the cardstock layers might sag. In the corners and at the middle of each edge helps. We want our next layers of adhesive to stack on top of these, so place them evenly. Adding support every few inches will make your finished results more even, so along the curves between these pieces is a good spot too. I like the tape because you can support big solid sections with just one piece cut to the size you need. Use a dark colored pen or marker to mark the backing paper of each adhesive piece, so you know which ones still need to be removed in a bit. While the other layers are still stacked face up, check where the next layer, that would be layer 2, will overlap with the one below it. I'll remember to put adhesives all around the solid frame like I did on this one, and in the lower solid forest section. I should secure the individual trees, but I'll need to use smaller foam pieces. I can't put adhesive near the tips because the next layer's trees are offset and it could stick to layer 4 by accident. And that might curve the cardstock, and we want everything even. Now back to the adhesives we've already applied. Remove the backing papers from the top half of them for now. Tweezers can help if they're stubborn. This way, you only have to manage some sticky areas while checking alignment, and you'll be able to access the remaining backing papers from the sides even when the top is secured. Hold the next piece, which will be layer 2, face down and correctly oriented over the one in the frame. Align the top corners and lightly press them in place. Once the top corners are secure, the rest of the design will fall into alignment. Carefully lift the layers just enough to access the remaining backing papers, but don't crease the cardstock. Remove the papers a few at a time, aligning and pressing the layers in place as you go. If you have any trouble reaching them, you can gently lift the design out of the frame for better access. The alignment should be very close, but you can carefully adjust it if needed. Once everything is aligned, put the layers back in the frame face down and oriented correctly. Lightly press down over the adhesives to really secure them. Now use the same process to secure the rest of the layers to make the foreground. Remember, position each new layer of adhesives as close as possible to the previous ones so they stack. You can lift the assembled layers up and look between the pieces to see where to place the new pieces. Remember to check for overlapping spots. Use adhesives of the same depth and keep the edges aligned so the foreground looks correct and fits the frame. When you get to layers with thinner elements that need support, cut your tape smaller or use the squares of the same depth. We'll add the adhesives to the back layer during our final assembly, so leave it plain for now. Set the frame and assembled foreground layers aside. Now let's do the mandala assembly. The intricate circle mandala layers don't have the outer frame sections like the foreground layers, so we'll use a different assembly technique. Place the 4 mandala layers face up to make sure they align. You might need to rotate some of the pieces to get it right. Then you can see which overlapping elements will be large enough to hide adhesive pieces. I'm going to use the tiny micro pop dots, which fit in the middle, on some of the bumps, and even behind some of the curved lines. It's easier to assemble the larger layers, so set the smaller ones aside. That's layer 6 and 7. Now place the smaller mandala, layer 8, face down on a clean work surface. These micro pop dots are tiny, so I use my reverse action tweezers to move them. You squeeze the sides to open the graspers, position them on either side of a dot, then release the sides to grab the material, and they stay shut. So unlike normal tweezers, you don't have to squeeze the tool tightly to keep hold of the tiny item. Some of the excess foam from around the micro pop dots might come up with the circle. You can gently remove it or try to pick it off of the packaging if you're going to use a lot of the dots. Place the dot sticky side down in the middle of the mandala's back. Leave the backing paper in place for now. If the foam tries to move, you can gently press it down. Continue placing micro pop dots in the areas large enough to hide them. Position them evenly across the mandala, about every inch or so you can stack the other layers to create a smooth surface. Make sure you can see a little of the cardstock's color all around the foam, so you'll be less likely to see the adhesive after everything is assembled. Mark the backing papers with your dark colored pen, just like we did before. These papers are tiny, so this trick really helps you keep track of them. It's easy to accidentally move the cardstock while adding the adhesives. So with the sticky section still protected, flip the mandala over and check its alignment on the larger one, rotating it until they match. Flip the top mandala, layer 8, to the side like opening a book so the orientation remains aligned with the larger layer. Remove the marked backing papers from the middle area. If the dots try to come up with the papers, hold the sticky side to the cardstock with your fingernail or tweezers, and carefully lift the paper from an edge. Flip the smaller mandala like closing a book and check the alignment again. Make sure the delicate middle cuts align too, because mandalas can look correct in one spot while being off in another. Gently set the middle down so a few uncovered dots stick, then lightly press to secure layer 8 to layer 9. Just don't press down so hard that the foam compresses and doesn't expand back. Pick up the assembled mandala layers and look in from a side to see the still covered foam pieces. Carefully lift the cardstock just enough that you can reach in with your fingers or tweezers to hold the furthest away adhesive dot in place and remove its paper backing. Look at the assembled layers from the front and make sure the white adhesive isn't visible. You can very, very carefully nudge pieces with the tweezers if you need to. Make sure everything is still in place and let the layers come back together. Now take your time and work around the mandala, adhering each dot. This is another time for patience. If you can't reach or miss removing some papers, it's okay, because the others will be enough to hold everything in place. Once that layer is secure, add the other mandala layers on top in descending order. So layer 7 on top of 8, and then layer 6 on top. Remember, try to put the dots on the same elements so the layers remain even. If you want to display the mandala on its own, you could hang it right now. But since mine will eventually stick to the background layer, I'll add micro pop dots to the back of the largest mandala, layer 9, and leave the marked protective papers in place for now. So now let's do the final assembly. You can use the frame to put the design all together, but I found it easier to start with the background face up on my work surface. Remove the middle backing papers from the assembled mandala. Hold the assembled mandala face up over the background, roughly centered. If one section didn't come out as nicely as the others, or if the adhesives are more visible, rotate the mandala in place so that section will be hidden by the foreground elements. Very lightly put the mandala in position on the background, but don't press it down and squish the foam. Place the assembled foreground layers on top of the mandala so the corners align with the background. Hold the foreground layers and background in place, then gently shift and rotate the mandala until it's centered in the middle of the circle cutout. Lightly press down on the mandala's middle where the adhesives are uncovered to secure the alignment. Set the foreground layers aside. Gently lift an edge of the assembled mandala and remove the remaining backing papers from the back of layer 9, one section at a time, like we did with the other layers. If you can't reach a dot without damaging the layers, it's okay to leave the papers on a few pieces here and there. Press down on the layers to adhere everything in place. Place the background and mandala layers face up in the frame with the assembled foreground layers face down to the side. Adhering the foreground layers to the background needs to take up the same amount of depth as the mandala layers did to keep the surface roughly even. I'll use the 1/4 inch Barely Art foam tape in squares around the edges of the last foreground layer, which is layer 5. Make sure the foam won't touch the mandala because the extra height will push that finished section higher than the rest of the design. You can mark the backing papers, but I'll just remove them. Orient the foreground layers in the frame and let them fall into place using the corners to help. Don't let them stick in place right away though. Check the middle circle's alignment because anything off will be noticeable there. Then press everything in place. Once assembled, carefully lift the design out of the frame. Use rubbing alcohol and a lint-free cloth to wipe down the inside and outside of the shadow box to remove any dust, cardstock bits, or adhesive pieces dropped while prepping the layers. Once the frame is dry, place the assembled layers face down inside. If your frame is slightly out of square, try rotating the assembled layers until they fit better. Place the backer in the frame with any hanging hardware oriented correctly. Now check the backer's height against the frame's prongs. If there's a large gap between the backer and the prongs, the layers could move around during hanging. So I recommend you remove the backer and then fold a rectangular scrap of cardstock in thirds to make a rounded triangle. Add some glue to the middle section and press it onto the back of the background in the middle. Let it dry and then add the backer with any hanging hardware oriented correctly. Gently press down each prong to hold the backer in place. Step 5, show it off. Your mandala shadow box is now complete. Isn't this amazing? Step 6, customize it. Would you like to learn how to make your own scene as part of a mandala shadow box? You can, and I can teach you how to make your own layout in Cricut Design Space using my toolkit. Once you know the steps, you can use them to make lots of designs. The Mandala Design Workshop is part of a special program called Advance with Jennifer Maker over at jennifermaker.com/advance. And this helps you expand your crafting skills by teaching you how to make these popular designs unique and special through tutorials and templates, as well as give you advanced access to my vast library of designs, projects, and resources. Now, I may or may not be accepting new members into the advanced program at the time you see this, but if you're interested, go to jennifermaker.com/advance to learn more and see how it all works. Now you know how to plan and assemble a layered paper shadow box. If you need any help, there's reference photos in the tutorial on my blog post over at jennifermaker.com/636. If you want to make one of these but don't have a cutting machine yet, a Cricut will really help you out because it makes cutting the cardstock so much easier than trying to get the perfect cuts by hand. And I don't want anyone to be left out, and I'd love to see you get a Cricut. I regularly do Cricut machine giveaways over on my blog. So I suggest you enter for the chance to win and get all of the giveaway details over at jennifermaker.com/Cricut giveaway. I'd love for you to win and make your own mandalas and so much more. If you have any questions about working with cardstock, your cutting machine, or anything else craft related that I can help you with, please let me know. You can leave your question below this video or ask over in our Cricut Crafters group at jennifermaker.com/Cricut Crafters. And please share your photos of your shadow boxes and other projects too. I absolutely love to see them. And that's it for today. Until next time, this is Jennifer Maker reminding you to craft a life you love.